So, hello and welcome to my talk. Today I would like to talk about outcome-oriented teams. So first, I want to introduce myself, of course. So my name is Nataliya Remez. Currently, I'm working as Agile coach in a company called Agile. But I have over 12 years experience overall in working in tech organizations on the different roles, beginning from developer and now, as you see, Agile coach. Also, I'm a fan of Agile and Lean methodologies in general, and I'm organizing Go Agile Stockholm meetup in Stockholm, Sweden. A little bit about my company. So Agile is a financial technology company founded in Stockholm back to 2010 by ex-Spotify employees. We are building solutions to empower small businesses across Europe to actually compete in the world of giants. Let's move on. So, I was thinking of why, in essence, what's wrong with Agile? Why, in essence, where, for example, as the CEO stated, when we are done with all of this, and then all of this, but you know, Agile, what do you mean, done? Well, going back to normal. Oh, great. I think we found our topic for today's coaching session. So I would be a coach for today to talk about those situations. So, yeah, again, think about it. Why the most of Agile transformation fail? Maybe you have some suggestions? Any?
Projects?
Projects?
And the projects.
Yeah, it's projects everywhere, right? Yeah, and they fail. They tend to fail, right? Okay, so never underestimate the power of stupid people in the large groups. I would like to ask my friend, American famous comic George Carlin, to help me today to answer those questions. Yeah. So, when we're talking about Agile transformation in general, we tend to focus on the transformation itself instead of thinking of actually what we're trying to solve with that transformation. Is it solving some business problem rather than it's focusing only on the transformation itself? And of course, quite famous question arises after we talk about each and every Agile transformation. How can we scale? How we can scale our organization? How we can scale actually Agile in our organization? But if it doesn't work on the level of the teams in your organization, how you can scale something that is already not working? And first of all, I would like to say that Agile transformation usually fails because of the complexity. And when it comes to complexity, there is a well-known framework to actually talk about situation on where you are in terms of your domain and your challenges in the organization. And this model is called Kanban, which was actually founded by Dave Snowden, who used this back to the times, in, as far as I remember, 1999, in IBM to actually lead their transformation within the company. And in essence, it's saying that usually domains, we have four kind of domains in which organization, which are complex, complicated, chaotic, and obvious. Here you can see that basically all of them are telling on cause and effect you can achieve in each and every domain. So if we are talking, the most interesting for us would be actually complex domain. But if we will talk briefly about other domains, in some of them it's quite easy to see the cause and effect connection based on the previous experience, or rather when you're playing and trying to actually see the cause and effect in uncertain situations. So the complex domain is only apparent through experimentation with hypotheses rather than learning only on the previous experience. And I think that Agile overall might not help you to solve problems which you might face in the complex domain. And actually techniques from DDD as they are might be a good idea to use in the complex domain. And Agile transformation also relies a lot on the culture of organization. And here I also would like to reference to famous Melvin Conway's quote saying that organizations which design systems are constrained to produce designs which are the copies of communication structure of this organization. You probably heard about this law a lot during this day, but again, it's quite important to keep it in mind when we're talking about agile transformation or any kind of transformation in general. And here is another great tool which you can employ and use in order to understand where your organization is currently which is called Western organizational culture, which was developed by famous American scientist Ron Westrom. And it basically categorizes all the organizations on these three groups. They would rather be power-oriented, rule-oriented, or performance-oriented. Usually, a lot of organizations nowadays, unfortunately, are within power and rule-oriented world. But ideally, we should aim with our agile transformation and any kind of transformations to be in somewhere between rule-oriented and performance-oriented group. In essence, what's changed since the last 10 years? We still have management by fear. We still have projects, plans, and estimates. Even worse, time estimates. Then we have work in silos. It's like having different departments. And of course, we don't have time for experimenting. We just need to deliver all the time. Then, how about if we will focus more on how we can organize, but not only for success, but essentially for customer success, not only organizational success. So, I would suggest that we'll start with why. As an example, I would like to show you a small story about some Swedish company, which is called Humble Company, which in essence have a vision to build everyday use products for the personal care with the mind of eco-friendliness, which means in essence that they built a product which is called Humble Brush, which is in essence a wooden toothbrush, and all the difference with a regular plastic brush, that it's environment friendly, and that it supports sustainability. So the short story is that, okay, if I'm their customer, I probably someone who needs to brush my teeth every day, right? But also I want to remain environment friendly with the tools I'm using. So therefore, why not to buy Humble Brush and use it? So I can stay healthy and make a less impact on the environment. So this is a story of why this company exists and why they maybe win a lot of customers, for example, in Sweden, because in Sweden we're very much focused on sustainability and eco-friendliness these days. And then, when it comes to product strategy, it's also quite important to keep in mind that strategy should evolve during the time. It shouldn't be fixed and top-down decision from the top management. And as my friend George Carlin said, some people have no idea what they're doing, and a lot of them are really good at it. So, if I ask you right now, do you have an understanding what your company's strategy is? Can you simply answer that question? How many of you can answer? Can you raise the hand? Not a lot. Yeah. But that's something for your leadership, actually, to improve in your company so that everyone in the organization knows the answer to this question. And when it comes to explaining on why it's quite important to be very flexible with your strategy is their understanding of actually Buca model, which originally came from US military. And essentially it is focused on that we all resist in volatile environment, highly volatile environment, and the rate of change is usually very high in this environment. So, product strategy, should it be rather hypothesis than some decision made from top to the bottom? I'd suggest you to think about it more and to talk with your, of course, management about how you get to this product strategy, why we have this strategy, what it is based on. And then, of course, since we want to be organized for customer success, first of all, so how can we be customer success more focused in terms of our organization? This is actually the typical triangle when we have a top-down hierarchy organization in place, when we have a senior level management or C-level management on the top of this pyramid, and then we have usually a layer of middle management and the teams in the end. And somewhere on the very bottom, our customers. So basically, all the decisions making going from the top to the bottom, instead of maybe rethinking this approach. So why not to turn this upside down, this pyramid, and why not to start with actually customers and their needs, and their inquiries, and their day-to-day life, and how we can help them with our product. And then, by working in cross-functional teams, organize around our customer needs. And then have maybe leaders with an agile mindset, but again, not the typical middle management structure. And the C-level people who are actually listening to their teams and to their customers from the top to the bottom. And yeah, so in essence, my talk is about outcome-oriented teams. So what's the difference between outcome and output? And what does it really mean? Is it the value over features? Here, I would like to provide my favorite example when someone is asking me, but what's the outcome? Imagine you want to buy a pizza. So it's a pizza example. You want to buy a pizza, but in essence, as a pizza service, delivery service provider, I'm delivering pizza. So my output is literally pizzas. And when it comes to delivery, I also have different options. I might deliver at home or something like that. So in essence, my business contains from pizza and delivery. And if I'm a customer, right, and I want to have some value, and I want to have some actually outcome, not output. Output would be pizza, but outcome would be on which basis I'm choosing the service which will deliver me the pizza. Why? Because then it means that some service might deliver me not really warm pizza, or not that pizza which I actually originally ordered. And this is the most essence of outcome vs output. So pizza is an output, and outcome is actually how good pizza is for me per my request. And when it comes to outcome-oriented teams, this is the raw idea on how you should maybe work in those cross-functional teams day by day. And at least based on my experience, it works perfectly fine without defining this process and calling it some kind of Scrum or Kanban based. It's rather when you have as a team, as a cross-functional team, including design, coming to some idea, whatever this idea might be. It might be a feature set, it might be some improvement, or it might be just, okay, how about if we pivot a little bit and change the direction of what's in the package? And then we experiment with this idea, which means we can run several sets of experiments, and then we actually can fail. And that is fine. Fail is okay. We need to learn on that rather than to focus that we failed. But also, after several experiments, we might come to the product or actually outcome which will satisfy our customer in the end. And this is why we will be organized for customer success. And this is how outcome-oriented teams deliver this customer success. So, just a short checklist about what outcome-oriented teams have in common, actually. They usually have a clear mission and goals. All the roles and skills needed to get job done, drive their own own priorities and processes, and have an open and honest collaboration between themselves and within the organization. What is another important thing to understand about outcome-oriented teams is that usually they have a very high level of alignment and autonomy. In essence, If you have a low alignment but high, let's say you have low alignment and low autonomy, usually this is the sign that you have a micromanagement environment in your company. When you have high alignment but low autonomy, it's when leaders essentially, or middle-level management essentially saying you what exactly you need to do. When you have a high autonomy but still low alignment, teams do whatever they want, basically, and leaders are helpless, and then you have a situation on what we, in essence, delivered for the last iteration. But in the outcome-oriented teams and outcome-oriented teams organizations, leaders define the problem, but it's up to the team to solve the problem. And it's not the exact solution, so we're not running to the solutions mode immediately. It's rather focusing on how we can solve the problem. And another one is important thing to know about outcome-oriented teams. It's that usually those teams have a lot of freedom, but with responsibility. And in essence, what does it mean? As Sigmund Freud once said, it's like most people do not really want freedom, because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of the responsibility. I would like to suggest to think about it quite more, because this is what in essence means when you have a freedom in your organization, but you should be responsible. And when it comes to processes, it's usually very easy nowadays to say, oh yeah, let's categorize those teams so that they will follow Scrum because we have moreover predictable deliveries or something like that. And this team can use Kanban because most probably this team is support, having a lot of support tickets, and it's quite easy to just jump to the solution on what process should be for the particular team. In outcome-oriented teams in comparison, it's different, because in outcome-oriented teams, it's up for the teams to come up to the process with which they want to run their day-to-day job. So it might not be Scrum, or might not be Kanban. But what do they have in common? And when it comes to the ways of working, I wouldn't say that it's some exact process, but it's rather a suggestion on the ways of working for those teams. It's a discovery and delivery. So in essence, discovery should, both of those, this is not the phases, but it's rather the ways of working, which needs to involve all the cross-functional teams. So designers are involved, product managers are involved, and tech is involved, or developers are involved. And in essence, you're on the discovery phase, not a phase, but again, on the beginning of this cycle. You get inspired, you have a signal from the market, let's say, or you have idea coming up from somewhere. It might be even internal idea for improvement of something in your product. And then you try to actually work on that problem, try to define what's the problem, and come up with several ideas of solutions and make a hypothesis about how you can actually resolve this problem with particular solutions. And what is most important, on how you can measure, was it successful experiment or not. And then after that, you can run several validation techniques of your hypothesis. In essence, it might be technical spike, or it might be prototype based on only wireframes, or it might be have a scheduled user interviews with your customers. And in the end, you got a lot of insights on your hypothesis, which you can then reuse and adjust your hypothesis accordingly. And after that, you can decide together again with the team and the organization, if it's needed, on what to prioritize in terms of running this experiment. So you take hypothesis from the kind of backlog. I know that some people doesn't like backlogs, but still, some kind of list of your upcoming experiments. And you run an experiment by building something, measuring that, and then learn on your findings. So in essence, this is what discovery and delivery in outcome-oriented teams is. Regarding a design phase, or so-called discovery, again, I decided to refer to actually Dan Brown, and where he stated in this practical design discovery book that the design on paper more looks like waterfall process, but that's not true. In reality, design is going through all your development and delivery process as well, because you might miss some bits and pieces which you need to do on the design part to be able to deliver and actually to run your experiment and to deliver customer value. This is why, again, discovery or design, it's not a phase, it's a continuous process. And yeah. And of course, it's also a mindset. So it should be a team mindset, not only designer mindset or UX designer mindset. It's the team mindset to work on discovery together. And yeah, and now interesting part, because I thought that based on my previous experience in some organizations, it's quite hard to convince the leaders. And it's quite hard to explain them how they can help or how they can support outcome-oriented teams and why it's important for them. And why it's important not to run to, as I said, immediate solutions and some problem-resolving things. So leaders can help with explaining, first of all, why, but not how, and also by making sure that there is autonomy culture in place, by supporting continuous learning and making sure that you have a safe-to-fail environment. Let's focus a little bit on what in essence means explain why but not what or how. This is so-called golden circle, introduced first by Simon Sinek. You probably saw a lot of YouTube videos and LinkedIn posts about it. It's in essence saying that you should explain for each and every of your employee or team member on why you are building the product in the first place. It shouldn't be saying like for profit only, because of course we all work for profit. But still, there should be a purpose behind your product. In essence, why you are building this product. And the leader should focus on making sure that each and every of you and each and every person in their organization understand why, but not run into the solutions on how and what. And of course, leaders might help with actually with influencing through autonomy. This is the paper research from the State of DevOps last year. It's a public document available under this link. So in essence, it's saying that by supporting trust and by supporting voice to be heard in your organization, you are achieving autonomy, and leaders need to embrace voice. Voice, for example, in essence, it means that if there are bad news about your production systems, or if there is some failure, you are not afraid to raise that, and you raise your voice and you say that. And you communicate that continuously, not only on the retrospective or some closed meetings within the teams. And then trust means that actually you trust your manager, you trust your leader to talk about different things, not only positive things. And you see that by saying that to your manager or leader, you see that he or she is working on improving the situation around you. So let's move on to continuous learning. And on this slide, you also see a part of the paper from State of DevOps, which is essentially saying that we need to embrace as a leaders climate for learning in organizations. And research is showing that this climate is better when you have regular retrospectives. And when retrospectives are different, and when you're not only just focusing on the bad parts or bad things happening, but you also see improvements through those retrospectives by maybe using action items and continuously check them and not forget them, how many teams tend to do these days, but rather focus on continuous learning on what we might change, which process is not working, or which rule we should get rid of, or something like that. Yeah, and of course, I would say one of the most important things that leaders need to ensure exists in your outcome-oriented team organization is safe-to-fail environment, which is in essence based on the psychological safety, and which is saying that safety actually exists when you are not afraid to be yourself, take risks, make mistakes, raise problems, disagree, and of course ask questions. So, learnings. It's not easy to become outcome-oriented. It's not comfortable for everyone, first of all for leaders, and of course for the team members, and it's challenging. Also, it's not the end state, like from the original question which CEO raised on the tweet, when we are done with this. It's a continuous process, and it's a challenge, and it's a journey. Outcome-oriented teams usually have a lot of things in common, and those are the things. So you should make sure that you have a direct contact with your customer, that you work on dedicated, fully cross-functional teams, including design, that you experiment and not afraid to fail, that you focus on measurable outcome and result, and of course you measure impact. As a team also, usually in an outcome-oriented team, you should work on your limit of work in progress, if there is a need to limit that. Optimize for flow, map and regularly revisit assumptions. Release regularly, of course it depends, but as much regularly as you can. And adjust your code base and infrastructure to do that. And regularly refactor and manage your technical debt as a part of your discovery and delivery, rather than focusing, this like technical debt sprints or whatever it is these days in the companies. And in essence, if you will ask me, what's the one important thing which I need to bring from this talk, this is that thing. It's saying that hypothesis-driven delivery should be when we believe that building this feature for these people will achieve this outcome, and we will know we're successful when we will see this signal from the market. So whatever process you will use, just keep in mind that you should work and focus more on working this way. So, again, back to my friend George. What's your next experiment? Thank you. Yes, so I guess we will have time for questions.
Yeah, I got a speaker box here. Mm-hmm. Anybody who has a question?
No questions?
Yeah, okay. Let's try. Oh,
oops.
Sorry.
Experimenting.
Thank you very much for the talk. I was mainly just checking how far you could throw, but also, so I'm wondering, like the overview, it's very much like you have an engaged leadership when you do this. I was wondering if you have any hints or ideas for getting this kind of thing in place when you don't have an engaged leadership. Like, how do you do that?
Okay, that's a great question. So just to understand it clearly, are you asking about engaged customers?
No, business leadership. So
leadership. Okay.
C-level and below C-level.
I think, from my, again, personal experience, that's a great question. But one of the things which I would immediately suggest if I were a coach in, let's say, your organization, I would take our C-level person with us on the user interview. Or we used to run this regular customer on-call based sessions when we basically sit next to our first-level support and hear which questions customer raised on the first-level support. And if you bring some management there, it will be very surprising for them, And then they start to realize that they actually don't hear the customer needs. This might be one of the ideas you can employ.
Is there another question? Okay,
Yeah,
there's a
here.
question here.
That's far away.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for the talk. I really liked it. I think I agree 100% with what you say. My question is if you have any sort of framework or methodology to go toward this experimentation model, and if you've tried the popcorn flow.
That's a good question, thank you. So I would immediately suggest to read more about scientific method. It's actually how scientists runs experimenting, on how they come with a hypothesis and how they evaluate the experiment. So it's, I would say it's very much inspired by that process they use. But also, when it comes to the flow, actually, I would highly recommend to use some kind of user story mapping, first of all, to understand your products and what is knowns and what is unknowns. And also try to maybe employ Kanban techniques to understand where you are and which domain you exists right now. Most probably it will be complex, but this is why maybe by using some techniques from DDD like event storming or user story mapping, it will help you to actually start with something. And then, of course, on the development or on the actually cross-functional teams level, you can always run experiments and you can always see, you can always try to actually build your value stream map for that particular part of the product and the team who is working on this product. And then you can see where is the bottleneck on your value stream map and focus more on improvement of that thing first. So again.
Thank you. I suggest you to look into the popcorn flow from my friend Claudio Perrone, which I think will fit perfectly on what you do.
I know about it.
We can talk about it.
That's interesting. Yeah, we actually use this popcorn flow in some of our teams in Izettle. That's really interesting.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay.
Are there more questions? We have some time.
No?
Yeah.
Oh.
Thank you for the talk. I have a question. Maybe you have some suggestions about measuring the outcome. How do you measure? What do you measure? Do you measure money or I don't know what and how?
That's a great question. So I would be honest, in several of my previous companies, we tried different techniques to do that. Most of the companies used to focus on using OKRs, so-called, like the Google-based idea of measuring something on your product. But I would suggest rather more soft techniques, like customer surveys. For example, if you're running small improvement on your existing feature, you can immediately send some message to a customer with whatever techniques are available these days and asking about how was your experience. It might be 5 stars rate, or it might be actual questions with how do you rate your experience. And by having this continuous feedback from your customers, it actually will help you to measure was the assumption successful or was it the wrong path. So at least we're using these techniques a lot these days in Izettle as well.
Okay, I saw a question there, yeah.
How do you measure the actual effect of being outcome-oriented?
Thank you for this question. When you start to measure something when it comes to people organizations, this might be very tricky. Because people don't want to be compared. Let's say this outcome-oriented teams is more successful than that because we measure this, this, and that. Each and every team usually is unique, and they have their own, I would say, indicators of how successful they are in their collaboration, in the delivery, actually, and the ways they communicate with other teams. So I would avoid measuring exactly some performance metrics like burn down charts for the team or doing some, I don't know, again, based like velocity-based measures. I would rather focus as a leader, of course, as well, on making sure that I take care of my people in the team and that they're happy to be in that team and they actually feel that they are a team. Okay. Somehow, yeah, like that. Yeah, one question.
Question there.
Yeah, you mentioned in one of the slides trust. I think this is a very important topic. It has, I think, something to do also with leadership. And there are two other terms, respect and ego. Can you say anything about how leadership can help or support these? Or in the case of ego, more suppress it, or how to deal with it?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for the question. So in terms of ego, we're talking about ego or leadership ego or personal?
Personal.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would say, first of all, that trust, if we will say more on the trust in terms of leadership, it's when you basically not running your one-on-one meetings as a manager with your people, right, and just have a simple checklist on what you should ask on each one-on-one. It's rather being actually a person who is empathic to your team member or to your subsidiary. I mean, in terms of if I'm a manager and I'm having one-on-one with my employee. So first of all, I think that's a very underestimated in the current state of leadership, that you have to build an empathy with your people, first of all, and of course with your customers. And by having this empathy in mind, you're kind of trying to wear the same shoes your colleague is wearing, and understand more on, like, not based on the ego again, on what's the challenge for him or for her, how we can help him to achieve something or to improve something in his day-to-day life. And also I think that we need to focus more on actually personalities rather than ego. Yeah, of course, some people have more strong personalities, but that's life. And I think in our software engineering industry, it's the most of the cases when you as a leader have to deal with a lot of ego and strong personalities. So you have to build this empathy in the first place to understand those people and to understand their challenges.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, there's a question here.
Hi. So my question is how you apply Canadian framework on day-to-day within the team, on the operational. Is it on the only strategic topic or even on operational day-to-day work within the teams?
Within the team. Yeah, thanks for this question. So again, I showed you two slides. It's kind of, I usually use them as a team health check. It's about what outcome-oriented team is and about what outcome-oriented teams are doing each and every day. Part of it is on my slides again. So it's about like making sure that we are in direct contact with our customers day by day, not like, oh, we have 1 hour for a call next week and that's enough. So if we have any concerns about solution or something that we're trying to experiment with, we're in the direct contact with the customer. And then it's a bunch of things which again is on that slide. It's about like working in a cross-functional team, which is highly important because then you have to collaborate with design. That in discovery, all the team is involved, not only designers and product managers. And essentially that you kind of have visual indicators of your work in progress somewhere. It might be physical board, or it might be any kind of tool. And then of course focus on the flow and removing impediments in your flow, if possible. So this is kind of some techniques which you can employ starting from tomorrow, I think. They are quite known. I hope I answered. Okay.
Any more questions? Yeah, there in the back.
Thanks for the talk. Really interesting. So you were talking a lot about autonomy and the teams owning their outcomes. I totally support that. In larger organizations, I've often seen the so-called runaway autonomy. So can you suggest certain techniques or methods on how you can align the different outcomes to actually move the organization towards the organization's mission and vision?
Yeah, that's a good question. So regarding the, first of all, making sure that we are aligned in terms of outcomes within organization, right? Again, when you start to, first of all, try to get rid of things like big room plannings or something like that. Why? Because then you immediately run to the solutions or to like a feature set which is assigned to some particular team. But rather focus more on the product side of the business. So make sure that you have, let's say you have a product and the user flow throughout your product. Try to first of all, kind of find where is the core domain of your product, and then see which are supporting domains or subdomains, and focus your teams around those, rather than try to map the teams to the whole flow, or assign them to some particular tasks, let's say to increase code coverage, or to be a testing automation teams, but rather focused on the domains in your product, right? That your team is actually have some kind of responsibility for those domains. We call it, for example, in Agile system ownership. So if you have, let's say, microservices architecture on the backend systems, it's quite easy because usually there is they are kind of bounded with the domains within your product, and then it's easy to actually map some kind of system ownerships for the outcome-oriented teams, so that they, at the same time, not only focused on the product itself, but also on the systems you have behind. And then it helps, because usually then engineers are quite encouraged, and you're not telling them exactly, okay, we need to implement this feature, so you should just come up with your part of the job because you own the system. They would rather need to think about what should they improve in their systems, which their team is owning, and come to the idea and run this experiment together with their team. So it's not like there is no magic, like, oh, we can be completely free, and there is no need to have some kind of ownership of something. There is still ownership, but it's quite easy to define that ownership based on how your product is built. I mean, how customer is using your product. For example, if it's an e-commerce solution, it's usually some integration or import-export of your product library, then actually managing your product library, then checkout probably, and reports. So you can organize the teams around those domains, rather than try to give them all the freedom and they don't know what to do. So it still needs some guidance and a lot of work from leaders as well.